Welcome to the first season of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko. As a teacher of freshmen and one of our freshman mentor committee faculty advisors, I spend a lot of my school day helping students navigate the successful transition from middle school to the halls of Emmaus High School. The goal of this podcast is to give you the story of the ninth grade here at Emmaus High School through the people who live it daily, the students and staff. We will attempt to touch on the real issues and stories that ninth grade students face, ranging from academics to athletics to technical school, and just trying to find your way as one person in a community of approximately 2,700 students. We will also look to speak with some of the influential staff members who play a key part in a student's ninth grade year. It's the hope that future ninth grade students and their families can use the tips and insights provided here to begin making connections to their new school and learn more about the day-to-day lives of the students that they one day will become and realize from day one that ninth grade counts. You can learn more about this episode and all the episodes of Season 1 on the website, while you can also follow us on Twitter at EHSFMC or at Chris Dutchko, or the hashtag EHS9Counts. But before we jump into today's topic, let's thank our sponsor for this show, the East Penn Education Foundation. This podcast has been made possible through a $1,000 grant awarded to teachers like me each year who are attempting to do unique projects in the area of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The foundation supports programs that put learning in motion by giving students the tools they need to think actively in a complex and changing world. You can follow them on Facebook at East Penn Education Foundation, on Twitter at EPSD EdFound, or Instagram at EPSD Ed Foundation. Now on to the show. Whether it's under the Friday night lights, beneath the waves at the swimming pool, or out on the beautiful sunshine tennis courts, the games you witness involving our varsity athletes here at Emmaus High School only tell part of the student-athlete story. What you don't see are the hours practicing and perfecting their sports, the homework that gets started at 9 p.m. after the long bus ride from the Poconos, or the sacrifices of not hanging out with friends or going to that late-night movie. On this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience, we're going to explore the world of becoming a varsity athlete in your first year on campus. Told through the stories of Nick Velde, wrestler, and Sarah Hoch, basketball, these two students give insight about the dedication and perseverance needed in order to excel in the area of athletics. They also talk about the importance of time management to get things done both on and off the court. So before you hand in that physical and get ready for the first day of tryouts, listen to Nick and Sarah give you the tips that could take you from the bench to the starting lineup. All right, thanks again for joining us on the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. Today we have two varsity athletes with us. We have Nick Velde.
Hello.
And we have Sarah Hoch.
Hey guys.
So they're going to give us a little bit about their year for their ninth grade year with the experience of being a varsity athlete, which is a great accomplishment for a ninth grader coming in. And we're just going to talk about what they did to get to that level, how they earned it, and what they did all season to maintain that. So thanks for joining us today, guys. So here's our first question, and as we told you, as they know from listening to the top, our podcast is called the Ninth Grade Experience. So either one of you can start, but can you describe what your ninth grade experience was like this year?
I'll go first. I guess it was good. It was a good transition from the beginning, but I mean, some classes were very hard at the beginning because it was very different from 8th to ninth grade, but over the year, as it started getting better, and I started to maintain and get through a schedule, have a certain routine, and excel in all my sports and academics.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Nick. At first it might seem kind of scary, but after 2 weeks or so, you get pretty used to it, and you meet a bunch of different people, and it's a really cool experience because once, Nick said, you get a routine down, it kind of flows into your schedule, and you get really comfortable with the environment here.
So we're recording this in May, and I want you to think back to last May. You were both in middle school. Nick, where were you?
Ire.
And Sarah?
I was also at Ire.
Okay, so we have two Ire people here today. And I want you to think back to May of last year at Ire. what were you thinking or anticipating as you were getting ready to come up to the high school, and what did you think that process was going to be like? And did it compare your freshman year compared to what you thought it was going to be?
I honestly remember sitting in like some of the classes. I'm pretty sure it was our science room, and we'd sit there and like the guidance counselors would come in, and when we started course selection and stuff, I was like 1,000 things were going through my head, and I was kind of like nervous, but at the same time I was excited because you're getting closer to like what you want to do in the future, and like all the opportunities that are here compared to the middle school level.
Yeah, I didn't really know what classes to take, how many classes to take, what classes to take. I wanted to be with my friends and stuff, but, it doesn't really work your way. So you just chose your classes that you thought would work in the future with you, and that, like, most of the counselors that came into our classes tell us about high school. Most people would think it would be, like, really scary to go up to, like, a high school, very different than the middle school, but it's not as hard as you would think it would be.
And both of you guys have pretty demanding schedules. I'm taking a look at them right now. Both of you are in all college prep or higher level classes. Both of you have honors level classes. Both of you have Spanish. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to say or talk to anybody in Spanish during the time here. But you're both taking pretty demanding schedules, and we're going to focus today on your role as athletes. But can you talk a little bit about like what did having such a challenging schedule and being an athlete, how were you able to balance that out and figure that out throughout the course of the season? Both of you are winter athletes, so you might have had a little bit of time to get going there at the beginning of the year, but talk a little bit about that process of your challenging class loads and then balancing that as student athletes.
Well, honors classes are typically harder than the GP and CP ones, so for those ones, you have to put a little bit more extra time into them and find places in your schedule to find study time, work time, do your homework and stuff like that, read. And it's like, you may think it's hard to balance out your schedule, but you can always find study halls, lunch, home, stuff like that to balance out your schedule and find a way to get your stuff done and excel in your academics.
Yeah, I know also like if, for me personally, in like the beginning of the year for like bio and stuff, I was a little uneasy because that's an honors course that I take. But one of the main things that I learned was if you're struggling in something, to always ask a teacher, or even like if you have a friend that's really like knowledgeable about that stuff, to go ask them. And like with the workload and stuff, I kind of split it up into like I'd take like mini breaks or something, and then if I had a practice or something, I'd be like, okay, this is my time to focus on the sport instead of like school. And then like after the practice, you just go right back to the books and like keep studying.
So you talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you developed to kind of balance those things, and we're definitely going to dive into that a little bit more. But let's talk about your lives as athletes here, because that's today's focus of this episode. And just the first thing is the amount of time that it takes up for you in a day or during the season, just so the freshmen that are coming up next year and maybe want to be an athlete kind of get an idea of the time commitment of being an athlete on one of the varsity or even JV teams here at the high school. So can you just tell everyone a little bit about what was the time commitment, and were you ready for that much time to be given to the sport?
I definitely think the time commitment, it is a lot, like, out of your day. You have, like, sometimes 2-hour practices right after school, or maybe, like, an hour and a half. But if, like, you really love the sport and your heart's into it, I didn't think it was that hard, because it's almost like a lifestyle now where you just, like, get used to going into the gym, working 2 hours, going home, and then you're, like, right back at it the next day.
Basically, every day was basically the same during wrestling season. Go to school, go to practice 2 or 3 hours, go home, do homework, eat dinner, go to bed. Same thing every day. You just had to maintain, and if you love the sport, you're going to do it. Basically, after that, after the year, I still do it. I still practice. I still go to school and stuff, but it's not as long and not as hard as it was during the season.
And both of you mentioned the multiple hour practices. Did you experience that at the middle school level? Was that something that was common? So, like, what was that jump from middle school athlete to high school athlete, and was it a lot bigger, and were you expecting it to be that much of a time commitment?
it was around the same time, but it's just a lot more serious at the high school level than the middle school because it's a lot more harder and it means more at the high school.
Yeah, you definitely have to be like really confident in yourself, because if you get like down on yourself just because you're younger than all the older people that you're playing with, you just gotta like find that and like keep pushing through, even with like the hard work that you have to put in.
And that's a good point you just brought up. It was something we were going to discuss later, but it seems like a good spot to bring it in now, is that idea about confidence. So you come up, you're a freshman, you're learning a new school, you're learning a new building, and now you're competing against maybe kids that are 3 or 4 years older than you, schools from all over the Lehigh Valley, and maybe even beyond if you guys participate in tournaments. So what is it about that, like competing at a higher level of competition? How is that adjustment, especially at the beginning of a season? I know Nick, before we started recording, said that you started the year at varsity, while Sarah kind of maybe started at JV and then worked her way to varsity. So kind of let's dive into a little bit of that level of competition that you guys faced, and what was that, the difference in kind of seeing that?
Difference between middle school and high school is that it's a lot more teams, it's a lot more serious, a lot harder, more competition, a lot more tournaments to go to. I've been doing this for, let's say, 11 years now for wrestling, and basically the competition and stuff like that, I've always been with it. I've always done tournaments all around the United States and stuff. I've been to Virginia and stuff like that. So the competition was not as hard for me because I've already done it and stuff like that. But definitely the years that people have on top of me was a lot. It showed because they were obviously bigger and better.
But at least for wrestling, you get to wrestle by weight. So even if the kid is 3 years older, they can only be within a certain weight range. So it's not like you're wrestling kids that are vastly bigger than you. They're all about the same size, I would guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have that, at least that, where maybe they have some years of knowledge for technique or style, but in terms of competing in a sport where it's one-on-one, at least you have the ability to wrestle somebody your own size.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously be more used to the amount of time in a match, because as you go up in middle school, from middle school to high school, it's a longer match. Instead of being 4 minutes, it's 6 minutes, so obviously they'll be more experienced in the conditioning part of it.
And Sarah, how about you? I mentioned earlier that you started the year at JV, but pretty quickly moved up to varsity and then earned a varsity letter in basketball and played a lot of minutes. So what was that like for you at the beginning of your season?
So definitely, before the season started, I kind of lacked confidence a bit, and my coaches even like talked with me about it. And I guess like the thing that like really helped me was like my family. Like your team becomes your family as like a whole sport. So they like really encouraged me to like keep trying harder and like not get so like down on myself if like I made a little mistake or something.
And you just talked about that team camaraderie and building the relationships. And we talk to students all the time about, at the beginning of their freshman year, finding something to join, whether it's a team or a club or an organization. Can you guys talk about the impact that being an athlete made on your transition to the high school? And was it easier? Was it harder? Did it make a big difference? So what was that like to have a built-in support system like you were talking about, basically there for you as part of your team?
The people I've been around wrestling, I've been around them forever because we've all done it for a very long time. And the transition to get to high school, the older people on my team, they supported me. They helped me when I asked them questions about the sport, maybe in academics too. And they supported me when I lost, when I won. If I did something bad, they helped me out. If I made a mistake, they helped me out. Basically the basics you'd think they do, they just help you out and they support you as a whole group.
Yeah, it's a great feeling, like, to know that just besides, like, your family at home, you also have, like, another family besides the one, and, like, they'll help you throughout it because, like, they've been there, they've done that, and they're, like, more experienced.
Was there a piece of advice that you got from a teammate or a coach that was something that you used throughout the season, either on the field or off, about that adjustment and how you kind of grew into the role of being the student athlete this year?
A friend of mine on the high school team, his name is Caden Wright. He just told me to go out there and have fun with the sport. Don't be so serious about it. Just let loose and just have fun with the sport, because if you're not having fun, then what's the point of doing it?
And Caden Wright, if I know correctly, was pretty high performer for wrestling this year, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're getting advice from one of the top wrestlers in his weight class in the Valley this year. So he's giving you some pretty good advice. Sarah, how about you? Did you remember or hear one thing from a teammate or a coach that kind of stuck with you through the season?
Yeah, I actually have two things. So my head coach, Coach Kelsey Gallagher, her motto was always play with heart, play with pride, and play with passion. And that kind of goes along with school too, because if you don't put the work into it, what are you going to get out of it? And Mallory Burns, she also taught me to never take anything for granted, because she tore her ACL and she unfortunately couldn't play her senior year, but she always taught me to push yourself as hard as you can and play like it's your last game.
So awesome. Such great advice that you guys gotten, and it seems that you've carried it out through the course of the season here and afterwards. So we've made it now, past your seasons. Both of your seasons were done in about March. So what have you been doing now? As an athlete, season's over. You still have 3 months of school left. But what have you been doing for your teams now, or what have you been doing to stay in your sports?
Wrestling, I train all year round, so I still go to clubs, the gym and stuff to get better for the season coming up here. So I still train and practice with people around me.
Yeah, I'm practically the same as Nick. We have open gyms here, and in fact, we have a summer league, and it's starting up pretty soon, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I also play on an AAU team, which is all of spring and some of summer, so that definitely keeps me in shape.
So I was talking to a couple of people earlier today, and this question kind of came up, and I thought it's an interesting question. Do you feel that you have now any pressure on you to remain a varsity athlete? So now you started your high school career off, you come in, you make the team as a freshman, and is the expectation that I'm going to make it no matter what, that level of competitiveness? So what do you think, or how do you feel going forward about being a varsity athlete? What do you think you need to do to maintain that? Do you take on a leadership role? What does that look like for you guys going forward?
I'm going to be honest, yeah, there is a little pressure, but because I love this sport so much, just being confident in myself and pushing myself even harder than I was last year, I think that it'll be better, and I could live up to that expectation if that's how people view it almost.
I completely agree with her. You need to have confidence for next year. Just saying that you're going to make the team, you got to set goals for yourself too. You got to set you're going to have this many wins, you're going to make this out into the state tournament, whatever. You just got to push yourself and give yourself confidence for next year, for people coming in and just get your spot as a starter.
So you're all looking forward to continuing as varsity athletes, pushing yourselves, working through that. A weird question, but maybe something you haven't thought much about. Has there been any downside or cost to being a varsity athlete as a freshman? Have you missed out on stuff, or are there things that you were not able to do because you had a 6 a.m. practice, or you were away at an away game, or anything like that? Maybe something you've had to give up on to continue to be an athlete.
I still do it, but hanging out with friends during the season is very hard to do. Being with friends, because you got to get up in the morning very early for practice on the weekends, where you typically hang out with them, and you have practice school all day during the weekends and practice, so it's hard to get to see your friends besides in school.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. Friends and family, but at the same time, it's almost the people that you're with, because you're with them more. It's those people are also your friends too. So you do sometimes miss out on things, if your friend has a party or something, but at the same time you still see them and you can still hang out with them, just maybe not during the season as much. Okay.
Couple more questions. You guys are doing a great job here at going through this and giving everyone kind of a snapshot of what life is like as an athlete. One of the things that varsity athletes at the high school do have to deal with is eligibility. Now, I know you guys are in some high-level classes, but that doesn't mean that you can't slip up from time to time. So can you give the listener an idea of what does it mean to stay eligible at the high school level, if you know, and was that ever a stress about maybe if you missed work, making it up, or making sure that you had all the grades? So what can you tell the people that are listening about staying eligible for your sport?
I'm pretty sure to stay eligible for any sport, you can't be failing 2 classes, I think. You need to maintain at least above not failing 2 classes. I'm not sure.
And did you have any sort of issue during your season when maybe you had missed a couple days or grades weren't in or anything that may have prevented that eligibility?
The only lowest grade I got was a C at the beginning of the year with my American Studies class. But other than that, it's really I've been eligible all year and stuff, and I've been able to be eligible to wrestle and play sports.
Sarah, have you had any issues with that, or like missed a test makeup or anything that may have come close to getting you to not be eligible and then overcoming that at all?
Not so far, but there are like times where if I wouldn't like be there for a test or something, I would ask my teacher like when I could come and make it up. And then like once your grade goes in, it's kind of like, okay, if you did good, let's reflect on like how you could do better if like you missed the test or like a lesson in that time.
Okay. So not really something that you guys have had to deal with, but it is a thing here at the high school for dealing with eligibility and making sure that students stay eligible to play the sports. As Nick mentioned, you do have a limit on how many classes you have to be passing a certain number of classes, and they determine that weekly. And if you are not eligible, you can't play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to mention any specifics, but if you've had people on your teams that aren't eligible to play, what does that kind of do to the team or do to the morale of the team?
It's basically kind of letting down the whole team. You know, you might need them for a match coming up and stuff that they won't be over there to help you out, practice and stuff. You're basically letting down the whole team, and it's going to reflect on them whether they get their grades back up.
Yeah, definitely. Like, sometimes academically, it's more important to focus on that. If you can't handle both, you have to, like, get either, like, better study habits or, like, somehow get extra help so that you could be both academically good and physically, like, good at your sport, too.
All right, so we've made it through. You guys have done a great job, and we're to the last question, and it's a pretty open-ended question. So as we've talked about, we have hopefully some future athletes here at Emmaus High School listening to this one. If you could give them, and you gave a lot of great advice during this episode here, if you could give them one piece of advice or just talk to them a little bit about what is the process or how you come into high school next year and you want to be a varsity athlete. What should they do? How should they act? How should they go about their day? If you could just give them a little advice on how to make that dream a reality for them.
I think that they have to put the time in if they want to be in a varsity, because people there, they've already been putting the time in, but you have to do the extra work, the extra run, the extra sprint, whatever it may be. You got to put the extra time in order to start.
Yeah, you definitely have to, like, work at it, because it's one thing to be physically strong, but to be mentally tough with everything that's like going on in your life, you have to know how to like deal with it and like push through if something's like difficult for you.
So great advice from both of you guys, and I think a lot of things that people can take from this episode if they want to be an athlete next year here at Emmaus High School. So I'd like to thank Nick and Sarah. Maybe you'll see them on the mat or on the court for the next 3 years here at the high school, and thanks a lot, guys, for taking some time out today.
Mm-hmm.